Beetlejuice has to be one of my favorite movies, especially with Beetlejuice 2 coming out. I am so incredibly excited to see that. So for Halloween, I wanted to be, well, Beetlejuice. Here's how to make Beetlejuice's jacket along with also the wig. For the jacket, I'm using an old suit top. Definitely make sure to check out any of your local thrift stores for any clothing that you might be able to use for this. I found this one over at Savers a long time ago, and I've been figuring out what I wanted to do with it. It is also a little bit on the larger side, which is great, so I can move around and put anything underneath it, especially if it's going to be colder outside during, well, fall time. For the jacket, I started off with some painter's tape, and I'm doing this on the collar portion of the jacket first. 3 pieces of painter's tape at a bit of an angle there, and then painter's tape underneath the collar here so I don't accidentally get any acrylic paint anywhere that I don't necessarily want it to be. The type of painter's tape that I'm using is the painter's tape that's on the thinner side, and I'm also using acrylic paint for this. I'm taking this acrylic paint and pretty much just painting it as I go. The painter's tape is going to create this little bit of a barrier here, and yes, this is going to look a bit more on the messy side in comparison to being fully and totally pristine lines, but that's more than okay. I was going for kind of a messy look on this jacket anyway because, well, it's Beetlejuice. Now, to speed up the process, you can always use a hairdryer, and then you can peel off the tape. When I was peeling these pieces off, everything was dry for the most part, and here is what the collar looked like. Now, for this piece here, I didn't go all the way up underneath both sides, but I wanted to make sure that I had some of this white line that was going downwards. Then I put a couple pieces of this tape on the sides. It didn't have to be fully and totally perfect. As long as it was relatively straight, that was more than good with me. And I put 4 pieces of tape. I did this on both sides as well. After that side was taped down, I made sure to put some tape where the arm area was, and I painted across here. Now, if you wanted to, you could go all the way up with that piece of tape. I just found that it wasn't fully and totally worth my time, especially because the under portion here is covered pretty well. So you could always maybe tape it, pin it, or do something like that in place with the collar of this jacket. Going around this button, and then just messily putting down some white acrylic paint here. After that had dried, I went over to the other side, and you can see me taping this where the arm is, just to keep some of that white paint from the arm area. Just like I did for the other side, I painted this here, and I filled everything in for where these lines were. Now, it took about 7 to 8 minutes for this to dry on this side, at least enough that I could move on to the next part. And the next part that I moved on to after taking all of this tape off, which is such a satisfying thing to do, so here's me removing some of the tape, was I moved on to the arms on the front portion of the jacket. I did end up painting the back as well too, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But removing these pieces after everything had dried is so incredibly satisfying. There's just a quick little clip of me doing so. Now onto the sleeves. So the sleeves, I'm taping the bottom here. It doesn't have to be fully and totally even, but I'm going up as evenly as I can with just eyeballing it and putting anywhere between 10 to 11 pieces of tape down. Then I'm painting this area in. Here's a quick time lapse of me doing so. And I went relatively light on the paint in comparison to going too heavy. If you wanted really solid lines, you could always go over the lines either 1 to 3 times. After that dried just enough, it was time to remove all of the pieces of tape. After you're removing these pieces of tape, definitely save them because you will need all of these pieces for the other side. After the other side was done, then you can flip over the jacket. You probably want to wait about 20 to 30 minutes in between doing this. Just like you did for the front, lay down some pieces of tape, paint it, then remove the tape, which here's what it looks like after I finished up the back. And then I started to add some little green splotches. These are along the lines of like little splotches of moss. I don't want to add these because I feel like it just brings so much more to this look. And, well, can't be Beetlejuice without some moss, of course. I put some onto the collar of the jacket as well too. A couple different places where the pocket was on the sleeves. You can always do this, you can skip this step. It really depends on how you want your look to be. I wanted Beetlejuice to be just a little bit more on the messy side, looking like, well, he just came out of the grave, of course. Now it's going to take about 2 to 3 hours for this to fully dry, so while you're waiting, you can always work on a tie. For the base, I'm using some black mixed with just a little bit of green. And after I painted the base down, then at the edges, just like I did with the jacket, I took some green, I mixed it in there, and I made it look like there were some splotches of moss. If you don't want to add a tie to your look, you could always just skip this step instead. But let's wait for that all to dry. Now onto the wig. This wig is actually an old green one that I had, and I have this styrofoam foam head, which really helps. I'm taking pieces of painter's tape, creating these little circles, putting them down, and after they're down, then I'm putting the wig onto it. I'm using a color that is just slightly brighter than this green here, going around where I want to cut off some of this extra bit of hair from the front, just because this wig has some bangs and I'm remaking this entire thing. Brushing that extra bit of hair back, and then I'm going to go around where all of those lines are after I tape this all together and cut off that extra area there. Keep in mind, Beetlejuice's hair, he has pretty much his entire forehead exposed, and his hair is definitely pretty wild in all directions. So cutting off this portion of the wig will really help when we put down a bald cap for the actual makeup. I'm using this brush to tease the hair slightly. I'm also going to be using a smaller brush here too to tease the hair even more and have this little tuft that is in the middle stick up. I only really did this towards mainly the front of where the wig is. The other portion of the wig I used some gel in my hands and I was able to get everything to stand up exactly how I wanted it to. With my hands, I'm taking the hair, pushing it upwards, and I'm massaging it towards the root of where the wig is. As you can see, it's really starting to stick up. If you have some hairspray and you hold this upside down, it will help to get it even poofier and give it some more volume. Now, Beetlejuice has a couple of different colors throughout his hair. This wig is pretty solid with one singular color, and it's not really the full look I'm going for, so I'm using some acrylic paint to add a bit of white along with also yellow in there, and I'm dry brushing this on with a fanned brush. Tapping out some of the white, I'm going towards where the root is, and I also did this really mainly just towards where the front of the wig is, because that's where you would see a lot more of that exposed. I did put a little bit towards some of the ending too, just to add some variation in there. And I got it as close as I could to mainly where the roots of the hair would be. Adding some yellow in there too, just to offset some of that green along with white. Just like I did for the white, I dry brushed in some yellow, and I got it as close as I possibly could to the roots of this wig. If you wanted to add some pants into this look, you could always find those typically at a thrift store and do the same exact thing that we did for the top. Here's the final look, and you can come back tomorrow to find out how to do it. Bye!